The man standing alone inside Dubai International Airport had only one suitcase, $300 in his wallet, and a photograph of his little daughter tucked safely inside his jacket. He had been told he was being sent to Dubai because his CEO believed he was the least important person in the company, someone easy to sacrifice if the assignment failed. But what the CEO did not know was that the quiet single father he had pushed aside was carrying a secret powerful enough to change the entire company. And before that day was over, one of the richest men in the world would look directly into his eyes and ask a question that would make everyone in the room go silent. Does your CEO know who you really are? If you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that people should never be judged by their position, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support helps us bring more stories about courage, family, and unexpected second chances. For 5 years, Arlen Mercer had worked quietly for a prestigious technology company called Veronese Global. He was 38 years old, a single father, and the kind of employee most executives barely noticed. Every morning, he arrived before sunrise, dressed in a simple gray shirt and dark trousers, carrying a small lunch bag prepared the night before. Every afternoon, he checked the time repeatedly because his 6-year-old daughter, Soraya, waited for him at the community school across town. Arlen had become both mother and father to her after losing his wife several years earlier, and although life had become harder, he never allowed his daughter to see him complain. He repaired broken toys at their small apartment, cooked simple dinners, helped her with school projects, and worked late after she fell asleep whenever extra money was needed. To his colleagues, he was simply a dependable operations manager. To Soraya, he was the safest person in the world. Arlen's life changed when Veronese Global began preparing for its most important international expansion. The company had developed a revolutionary logistics platform and was trying to secure a massive partnership in Dubai with a private investment group. The project was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and everyone in the company knew that failure could damage the CEO's reputation. Arlen had spent months quietly correcting flaws in the company's international operating system. He noticed problems others ignored, discovered financial inconsistencies that could have cost millions, and developed a practical recovery plan that eventually became the backbone of the Dubai proposal. Yet when the executives presented the project to CEO Garrick Voss, Arlen's name was barely mentioned. Garrick was a powerful man who believed confidence mattered more than character, and he had little patience for employees who did not fit his image of success. One bright Monday morning, Arlen was called into the executive conference room. Garrick informed him that he was being sent to Dubai immediately to handle an urgent operational crisis. The assignment was presented as an opportunity, but everyone understood what it really meant. The original project director had suddenly withdrawn, and Garrick did not want to risk sending anyone important. Arlen was the convenient choice because he had no influential friends in the executive office and, in Garrick's words, was good at fixing problems nobody else wanted. Arlen asked about the travel arrangements and how long he would be away from his daughter. Garrick coldly told him that the company expected complete commitment and that personal responsibilities could not interfere with business. Arlen swallowed his disappointment and accepted the assignment because losing his job would mean losing the stability Soraya depended on. That afternoon, Arlen sat beside Soraya in their small apartment and explained that he had to travel for work. He tried to make the trip sound exciting, telling her about the tall buildings, the bright city, and the possibility of bringing home a small souvenir. Soraya listened quietly before asking whether he would come back. Arlen hugged her tightly and promised that no matter how far away he traveled, he would always come back to her. That night, after she fell asleep, he stood beside her bed for several minutes, fighting the tears he refused to let her see. The next morning, he left for the airport with one suitcase, his company laptop, and the photograph of Soraya in his pocket. Dubai greeted him with bright daylight, glass towers, spotless roads, and a city moving with incredible speed. But while the city looked magnificent, Arlen's assignment was collapsing before his eyes. The local partner had discovered major inconsistencies in the company's proposal. Several financial projections were inaccurate, delivery schedules had been exaggerated, and internal data appeared to have been manipulated before reaching the investment group. Arlen quickly realized that the crisis was not caused by incompetence. Someone inside Veronese Global had deliberately altered information to make the project appear more profitable than it was. If the truth became public, the company could lose the partnership and face serious financial consequences. Arlen immediately contacted Garrick, expecting support. Instead, the CEO blamed him for the situation and ordered him to make the numbers work. Arlen refused to falsify documents. Garrick became furious and warned him that his position depended on completing the deal. Arlen knew what that meant. He could either protect his career or protect his integrity. For a moment, he thought about Soraya, about the rent due at home, about school fees, and about how difficult it would be to find another job. Then he remembered something his late wife had once told him: a person could lose money and rebuild, but losing the ability to respect himself was much harder to recover from. Arlen spent the entire day examining every document. Instead of hiding the company's mistakes, he created a detailed report showing exactly where the numbers had been manipulated. He discovered that the altered figures were connected to a senior executive who had secretly promised certain investors enormous returns. The evidence was clear enough to expose the entire scheme, but Arlen had no idea whether anyone powerful would believe him. He arrived at the investment group's headquarters the next morning carrying a plain folder and wearing the same modest suit he had traveled in. Around him were executives wearing expensive watches and perfectly tailored clothing. Arlen looked out of place, but he walked into the meeting anyway. The meeting took place inside a modern glass conference room overlooking the city in bright afternoon light. Several executives were waiting, along with lawyers, financial advisors, and representatives of the investment group. Arlen prepared himself for humiliation. Then the doors opened, and the room became completely still. The man who entered was Zayden al-Hariri, a billionaire investor known throughout the region for building companies from the ground up. He was not loud or theatrical. He simply carried himself with the calm confidence of someone who did not need to prove his importance. Zayden studied the documents Arlen had brought. As he read, his expression slowly changed. He realized that Arlen had uncovered the truth while everyone else had been trying to protect themselves. The billionaire looked up and asked why a mid-level operations manager had been sent to handle a transaction of such enormous importance. Arlen explained that he was simply doing the job his CEO had assigned him. Zayden looked at the report again and then asked the question that changed everything: "Does your CEO know who you are?" Arlen was confused. Zayden explained that he had already investigated the architecture behind Veronese Global's logistics platform. Years earlier, before the company became famous, the original system had been developed by an anonymous engineer who had refused public recognition. The engineer's work had solved a complex supply chain problem that later became the foundation of Veronese's international technology. That engineer was Arlen. He had never received proper credit because the company had purchased his original consulting contract years earlier and absorbed his work into the organization. Arlen had never complained. He had simply continued working, believing that providing for his daughter mattered more than receiving applause. Zayden had recognized the technical patterns in Arlen's report and realized that the quiet employee sitting before him was the person whose innovation had made much of Veronese's success possible. More importantly, Zayden had discovered that Arlen had refused to manipulate financial information even when his own job was at risk. The billionaire told the room that companies often searched for brilliant people while overlooking honorable ones, even though the second quality was far harder to replace. Then everything changed. Zayden refused to sign the original partnership agreement. Instead, he offered Veronese Global a new agreement based entirely on Arlen's corrected proposal, but only if Arlen became the company's international operations director and received full authority over the Dubai expansion. The board had little choice but to accept. When Garrick joined the emergency video conference and saw Arlen sitting beside the billionaire investor, his confidence disappeared. The man he had considered disposable was now the person standing between his company and its largest opportunity. Arlen did not celebrate Garrick's downfall. He asked only that the employees who had been blamed for the manipulated figures be protected and that the truth be investigated properly. Zayden admired that decision. He later offered Arlen an executive position within the new partnership, but Arlen requested something else first, enough flexibility to remain present in Soraya's life. Zayden agreed without hesitation. 3 weeks later, Arlen returned home during a clear, bright afternoon. Soraya saw him walking through the school gate and ran toward him with all the energy she had been saving for the moment he came back. Arlen dropped his suitcase and knelt down as she threw her arms around him. He did not tell her about the billionaire, the conference room, or the millions of dollars involved. He simply held her and told her that he had missed her every single day. Months later, Arlen stood in a new office overlooking the same city where he had once arrived feeling powerless. His title had changed, his salary had changed, and people who once ignored him now listened carefully when he spoke. But the most important thing had remained unchanged. Every evening, he still called Soraya before dinner. Every weekend, he still helped her with homework. And on his desk, beside the expensive awards and business documents, remained the small photograph he had carried to Dubai. Arlen's story became a reminder that sometimes being overlooked is not the end of your story. Sometimes it is the quiet beginning of something greater. The people who underestimate you may never understand your value until someone with clear eyes finally sees it. And sometimes the greatest victory is not proving your enemies wrong. It is returning home to the people you love without having betrayed the person you are. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad for more emotional stories about family, courage, and second chances. And before we end, I have one special request. Comment, "I choose kindness," below if you believe a person's true worth should never be measured by their job title, money, or social status. Because Arlen's greatest achievement was never becoming powerful. It was remaining a good father and an honest man when nobody was watching. And perhaps that is the lesson we all need to remember. You may be invisible to the wrong people, but that does not mean you are without value. Sometimes, all it takes is one person seeing the truth to change your entire life.